Good afternoon / coming into evening, I suppose. And welcome to the Franchise Tag podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, joined once again by Sky and Johnny. And again, we look at another division, couple of divisions, I suppose. We've gone through the North, we've gone through over the East. Make sure you go and check them out on all of our social media platforms as well as YouTube. And now we go towards the dreaded South. I have not been quiet about my anticipation for this episode being a bit of a dud because I feel like the teams in these divisions are a bit of a dud. Maybe harsh of me, harsh to all you NFC and AFC South fans out there. But Johnny, I'm hoping you said you're quite pumped up for these divisions.
Mate, I'm going to try and change the narrative. I'm going to go for some bold predictions for all these teams. Look, there's so much excitement. I think, as much as, the quality last year wasn't there in both the NFC and AFC South. But excluding the Jags, every team has got a new quarterback this year. There's a lot of youth. And I think, resetting is possibly one of the words for a couple of teams. But with that, I think brings a bit of excitement. So a lot of them are headed into a bit of the unknown. But I think a few teams in both divisions can really shock a few people in 2023.
Since about 2:00 this afternoon, I've been having a bit of a weird niggling headache coming on. It doesn't paracetamol when I got home, and it's still sort of niggling. Is this going to alleviate my pain, Sky? Is my head going to get more sore after listening to all of this?
As long as we don't focus on talking about Ursay and the Colts too much, I don't think your head's is in the clear. I think there's enough excitement around, these rookie quarterbacks coming through, some of the moves that have been made by these teams in, free agency, like the Panthers have made some additions. There's some exciting players to talk about. So I'm sure we can jazz both divisions up and make them exciting for you.
I do hope so. It needs some jazzing. A bit of Pritt stick and glitter. A bit of Pritt stick and glitter, and these divisions are going to come out sparkling by the end of it. We're going to turn this prize pig into, I don't even know where I'm going to go with that, to be honest. But right, let's start off with the NFC South, I suppose. And Johnny, seems you're so raring to go. I mean, you can start us off this week. Which team do you want to start talking about?
I'll kick us off with, I'll tell you what, we'll start with a bit of the doom and gloom, shall we, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, Tom Brady's retirement, they're coming off a pretty poor 2022 where, I think you could clearly see the regression, not just in Brady, but across the board. And I think Tampa Bay stock is going to continue falling this year. Baker Mayfield comes in as their starter, but that's a significant downgrade from the quarterback play from last year. And there's been so many questions about their offensive line. Yes, they have Tristan Wirfs, the elite right tackle, but I'm aware he's maybe moving to left tackle this year. So there's a bit of transition. I know they lost a few players as well in that unit. So I think it's just about rebuilding. And it wouldn't surprise me, I think, if the season started poorly, which a lot of people are expecting it to be, very difficult, that we may see the likes of, Mike Evans, possibly, Devin White's been someone who's been mentioned about being moved on. Yes, okay, he's coming off a couple of poor seasons, but he's still a pretty elite talent on his day. There's obviously got other key stars that a lot of championship chasing teams will want to poach for their remaining years. So it's all about the unit and the on both sides. I think there's a lot of question marks for Tampa Bay. It's a difficult one. They were the benchmark, or have been the benchmark for the last couple of years, and all of a sudden they're now chasing the pack in terms of the pre-season expectations and power ranking sort of boards. They're just continuing to fall. So that's the end of the pessimism, I think. And it's going to be a difficult year, I think, in Tampa Bay.
I watched a lot of Baker Mayfield with the Cleveland Browns being a Pittsburgh Steelers. I saw a lot of his games. Saw a few of his games for the Rams as well. Didn't really see much of him at the Panthers. But would it be bold to say, Sky, that we may be seeing Kyle Trask at some point this year?
I think we could, but I don't think so. I'm actually sold on Mayfield and the Buccaneers. I think just get ready.
You sold on Mayfield and the Buccaneers. What is this?
In terms of their expectations being low, like there are weapons there for him to have. I can't believe I'm going to say this if we put in a reel or something. He could have a Geno Smith type comeback season. They've got Mike Evans. They've got Godwin. I know Russell Gage has obviously been hurt, but there was one of the younger guys who they've got through the draft. I can't remember the guy's name, but he even burnt Sauce Gardner recently in a practice between the Jets and the Buccaneers for like 60-yard play, and I think that was being talked about a lot on Twitter. Probably good that I forgot his name because I can keep him for fantasy on the back burner. But yeah, I think of course the O-line was poor. I don't think Brady was probably as bad as some people made out, but clearly he needed to go, and so did Leonard Fournette. And I think they've managed to keep some integral pieces to this team in terms of, Levante David, Barrett. You've got Winfield, Colton Davis. And I think there are some pillars there of those championship years where, of course, the Buccaneers don't want to win a Super Bowl, but I don't think they could be as bad as everybody is making out. All Baker Mayfield needs to do is keep those turnovers down. And I think we did see that develop in his time as a quarterback. It's just that he even managed to take the Browns to the playoffs. People forget about that. Like, this is the Browns. They're not exactly in the best position now, are they, with everything going on? So he's done well there. And I remember the rookie's name. It's Trey Palmer, by the way. Just come to me. But yeah, I think Tampa Bay, not saying they're going to win the division, but decent chance. So I'm obviously more optimistic than Johnny for Tampa Bay.
No, it's gone.
I cannot tell you how angry you're making me deep inside.
It's good.
That's why I was gone for so long.
It's taken a moment.
Comeback player of the year, Baker Mayfield.
Have I come back to us? Have I come back to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Oh, well, the small pit of rage is burning in me if you think Baker Mayfield's going to have a Geno Smith type season. I mean, I can't get behind it. I can't get behind him. I just find him a bust. I've just thought he's a bust since the time he came in, and it's just, I feel like I'm improving so far. I don't know. Maybe he could turn Tampa Bay Buccaneers right. You can say anything more bizarre now, Sky, as we move on to our next team. What team are you going to talk about now?
Yeah, let me try to not be as bizarre before I get a reputation. I think I'm going to lean towards the Falcons because this team in 2022...
Desmond Ridder's going to look like Aaron Rodgers, is he? Oh, is that Bijan Robinson's going to be like LT. AJ Terrell's going to be Revis Island.
If I talk up Bijan Robinson, I'm obviously stating the obvious. I don't really have enough to say about Ridder, but I just think as a team, they were very competitive in 2022 compared to where people thought they would be. I think 13 of their 17 games were decided by one score. I saw a stat on that. So we touched upon this last week when we spoke about obviously teams like Vikings, Lions, etc. Those teams make or break. You can have a great season or awful season, but the one score game indicator is good to sort of say, okay, our roster has some depth. Obviously they have a good O-line. Algier had over 1,000 yards in his rookie season. So you add Bijan Robinson to that. You've got Kyle Pitts. You've got Drake London. There is potential there for the Falcons to have an exciting season, but I don't think I know enough about Desmond Ridder to say how I think he'll have a good season. Obviously the Mariota project didn't work out, but for them, if they can, if it works out for them, I guess it's a bit like what you said, Freddie, with the Jordan Love situation. They're just going to throw Ridder at it, right, and see what happens. If it works, good. If not, they get a QB next year, and they've still got a great, exciting young roster.
And I suppose, Johnny, Bijan Robinson's the biggest sort of story coming out of the Falcons right now. People are, how incredible he was at Texas. Some people have seen him as the best player in the draft. In some opinions, anyway, he's already completely hyped up that he's going to be incredible in this league. I mean, fantasy football has now started for a lot of people. People have been watching. People have been already drafting. Our baby league drafted the other night for my partners in. Bijan went in the first round. No surprise there. So already people are starting to talk about him. And I mean, when Sky just said then, Pitts, London, Robinson, like this offense sounds on paper really electric. Do you think Robinson might be the key piece to getting this going, even though Algier had a top season last year?
Yeah, I think Robinson is the absolute mustard. He just looks, the speed, the burst, the power. Yeah, just an unreal asset to have on any team. And like you say, it's so exciting the youth of obviously Pitts had a pretty poor season last year compared to his rookie year. He's coming back from an injury, so he's got a massive point to prove. As he's had all this hype as the best college tight end of all time. He needs to, set down a precedent and really show himself to be a top 5 tight end. And same with Drake London as well. He was the first receiver drafted in last year's draft. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. And he was fairly quiet, I think, compared to his peers from that class, the likes of Garrett Wilson, Olave at the Saints. London has to step up another gear, and Desmond Ridder is slightly unknown. I think he stood his own quite well last year when he came in as a starter. But, this offense is only going to go as far as he can take it. And I think for me, and probably many others, I'm not sure, like yourselves, I think if you compare the ceiling of the player to the unit or the weapons around him, then, the latter has far more potential. And, that's, the risk of what they'll be missing this year. But I'm looking at this Falcons schedule, and honestly, I'm going to go bizarre. I think they could get 10, 11 wins this year if everything just clicks. They've
What's going on this podcast today? What is this?
Got to go bold. It's got to go bold. I think. Tyler Heineke's a very solid pickup. They brought in as well. I think. If worst comes to worst. I'm not for any reason saying that Tyler Heineke could lead them to, an 11-win season. But I think if there's just that one bit of clicking with Desmond Ridder, then my word, these Falcons are going to surprise a few people. I think they've got, a good offensive line. Weapons are outrageous. The defense needs to step up, but I think they've added some names this year. They've got a new DC in the from the Saints, who was, I can't remember his name, but obviously the Saints have had such a dominant defensive line over the last decade. Hopefully he can bring some of his magic. So, mate, I'm really excited about the Falcons. Just takes that one bit of clicking. 11, 12 wins. Come on, here we go.
Of course, we're going to be seeing this 10-win team at Falcons in London as well against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe at Wembley. If I'm right. I feel like my headache's just getting worse here. I'm probably getting all stuttery as well because my Wi-Fi's playing up, but it's fine. Johnny, we'll stick on you. Who next do you want to talk about the NFC South outside of the Carolina Panthers or the New Orleans Saints?
I will probably go for the Panthers, I think, because they've been, they've probably had the most change this offseason with obviously a new head coach, Frank Reich, and trading up to the number 1 overall pick in the draft to select Bryce Young. And again, really, really, really positive. Probably not as positive as the Falcons for the Panthers, because I still see there's, a lot of change that can take time for, particularly for a rookie QB to, adapt. And I mean, we know everything about the talent and potential of Young. It's just unfortunate that the main headlines that we've seen is, everything that comes with it, with the makeup of the player. But yeah, the talent is there for all to see. If I'm hoping for a partnership like Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence last year, where there was a franchise was at the bottom in terms of expectations, and the Panthers had a relatively good team last year, but I think just the quarterback situation just let them down. They've got Josh McCown coming in as well. He's expected to be the Texans head coach. So I think that it's pretty cool that he's managed to end up as I think he's a quarterback coach for Young. So I'm looking forward to really seeing that Young develop. And I hope that the Panthers can just stick with him through difficult times, because it's going to be difficult. I'm sure, but what else? The defense as well, that has to be on point, obviously, to keep them in games and really help the development of a young quarterback. They've got the DC from the Broncos, and we know how good the Broncos were last year. Obviously didn't equate on the offensive side of the ball, but yeah, I'm hoping that the unit in Carolina can be can bring that sort of experience and expertise to the team. So yeah, I'm waffling on a bit, but I mean, anyone is a contender in the South. So why not the Panthers as well, with a new rookie QB? So yeah, I think there'll be a lot of eyes on Young, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's like as an NFL player.
And we'll move. I'll put my 50p in about the Panthers. The Panthers on this podcast have been massively supported year on year. I mean, when Adam and Andrew was doing the show more regularly than myself, when then Adam and Andrew and myself were doing the show more regularly last year and the year before that, we were very hot on the Panthers every year. We said that they could be a playoff team. We really liked their age. They're all very young, very, very good players. And we said, if it does click at that quarterback position, this team could really go. I know they've lost a couple of key personnel people like DJ Moore, but bringing in someone like Bryce Young, I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. I don't want to put any more stock in the Panthers than I already have, because I've put good stock in the Panthers every year that they're going to be the team that comes out on top in that division. I'm going to wait and see this time. I think Frank Reich's a really good coach, and could definitely develop Bryce Young. And he's got some good players there. I mean, getting Adam Thielen in is quite an astute signing, I think. Someone who is experienced and is still a good player. They might just not be able to take the top off of teams just yet, but I think they could be certainly competitive in a lot of games. So, Sky, it's just New Orleans Saints to talk about. Derek Carr is going to work some magic for New Orleans.
I think that probably of the four teams, they're probably most people's favourites. I know Johnny was talking about the Falcons getting 10, 11 wins. I think whoever wins this division will probably be at about 10-7, right? Because of the state that it's in. It's obviously great that Derek Carr's there. I like Derek Carr. I think a lot of people root for Derek Carr. He's a good guy. I think he's probably he's that middle guy, right? Where is he underappreciated? Is he not as good? I think he is an NFL viable quarterback. It's just what's around him. I really like Olave as a receiver. There's obviously always question marks over Michael Thomas's health, but they've got Shaheed as well. He's obviously a speedster. I know Alvin Kamara is going to be missing a few games with suspension, but I think if they can withstand some of the defensive line overhaul that they've had and the offense can get into a rhythm early, they have a good shot of winning the South. And I think probably I don't know if it's an underrated weapon of all, but we saw Johnson, the tight end, who's probably good enough to play receiver, right? He had a great season last year, and we know how good Derek Carr's rapport was with Darren Waller as a Raider. So I think he could have another good season at that position. They got Foster Moreau as well in as well, didn't they? Who obviously was also Derek Carr's teammate. So I think there's some good pieces on that offense, bit of stability with the coaching staff, and I'd probably make them as my not bold choice and being logical. The Saints are probably at this point the favourites until the season starts, but only just about.
Yeah, I would say if I was going to take it now, I'd say the Saints are going to top that division. I'm a lot bigger on Derek Carr than a lot of people. I also think everyone every year underrates the Saints defense. They're always really top tier, even though there has been turnaround. They always keep their key guys, people like Cam, and they're always a really hard defense to go up against. And it's a hard place to go as well, going to New Orleans and trying to play them in their backyard. I really want to do really well here. Like I said, the offense is going to be maybe a bit trickier, but the Raiders hasn't got many of these big names out of suspension, but they're bringing Jamal Williams just off of a hot streak of last year. This could be a really interesting team. They could almost have two very different seasons in the bye week, depending on how it goes and depending on injuries and keeping players in form. So we'll just have to see what happens with that in New Orleans. Let's go on to the AFC South. And I'll jump back to Sky again. I'll give him the start on this one with the AFC South. A bit more a division, but I'm a little bit more interested, I suppose, over the NFC. Like we said in this, the title is rookie quarterback division. There's a lot of some rookie quarterbacks in both of these divisions, and a lot of quarterback movement as well. So it's certainly very interesting. But who do you want to kick off with in the AFC South?
It's tough, right? I'll go with. I think I'll go with the Houston Texans. I think that they could potentially be Jacksonville's strongest competition because of them being new look. Everyone's obviously talking about DeMarco Ryans. We saw how great he was leading that 49ers defense last year. And I know everyone's talking about CJ Stroud. And I mean, naturally so, right? When you're the new franchise quarterback, that's going to be the case. But I think Ryans has a lot of several additions on this defense, which can make an impact. So obviously everyone's going to talk about drafting Will Anderson, but they've also got Sheldon Rankins. You've got Jimmy Ward at safety. Perryman, the linebacker, had a good season last year as well. So I think it could be an unexpectedly big turnaround. The only question mark for me really with the Texans is the defense is going to be the one keeping them in games. And I don't know about the receiver position, because when you've got the likes of Dell and Xavier Hutchinson, these rookies, they have a chance to make a name for themselves. And arguably, this is probably the best franchise you could go to as a rookie to start immediately, because, you know, their other main receivers are Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and I think they got Noah Brown, who was at the Cowboys. So there's not like massive weapons in that passing game. But then on the flip side, you've also got Pierce and Singletary as a 1-2 punch running wise. So if that stays healthy and you have a strong defense, then that could take some pressure off of Stroud. And yeah, I think they could have quite a good season.
Is this a bit of a no pressure situation for them, Johnny, as well? Like we talked about with the Packers and with the Falcons as well. Not the Falcons, did we say there's no pressure on them? The Bucs, I suppose, as well, like coming up to next draft for the quarterback position. However, I don't think the Texans is about obviously the quarterback position. It's more about, let's see what we've got with this quarterback. Let's develop this team. We've got some young guys. We've had some high draft picks. We're probably still going to get some high draft picks. We traded away a pick to go and get Will Anderson this year. Is it just, got a new head coach? Is it just sort of a feeling out? This is going to be sort of feeling out where they're going to be going, the Texans, really, rather than this being, sort of ride or die season, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. I like the, what Sky said about the it being a great place for a rookie to go to, obviously with the amount of change and the change of culture around Houston. New head coach who's, I'm sure he's got such a huge buy-in from the fans, given his, his affiliation with the Texans. So, to come into that environment where there's no pressure as such because they've had such a difficult few years, I think that's the right sort of thing to, say it. And, there's a lot of excitement, obviously, with those rookies who've come in, Stroud and Anderson in particular. I'm probably not as, positive yet that as Sky. I still think it's bold to even say that they'll win 6-7 games this year. I do think that I think overall, until we've seen on the field, I think we've had players for the likes of Stingley last year, who was drafted over Sauce Gardner. He's got a big point to prove. Okay, wasn't necessarily bad, but really has to step up again to justify why the Texans took him so early. I think Damien Pierce as well has another prove it year. I think he started so brightly and was just a little bit inconsistent at times. So yeah, another big one for him. So I think that the roster is building. It's certainly not the worst NFL team, but it's been crawling up the rankings, in my opinion, over the last year or so. So yeah, I think there's a lot to get excited about this year, but it's not about make or break year. I think there's some exciting games that fans will be looking at, particularly week 16 against the Cleveland Browns. A bit of a revenge game with Deshaun Watson, and I think winning a game like that could really have a profound impact on this roster and the directions of where the Texans go in the next couple of years.
Also getting the sounds of, look, we all three of us live in London. You're getting the sounds of London behind you. Police sirens and ambulance sirens going off. That's just London City, baby. The big smoke. That's how we roll around here. Oh, is it happening? It's all happening. It's all happening in London City. Johnny, why don't we go back to you, mate? Because it sounds like you've got either the Jags, the Titans, or the other team that's in the South. It's completely escaping me. God,
the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts.
That team.
Why do we go with that team?
And what's worse is I'm meant to be plugging something about the Colts as well. I completely forgot that team. So go on.
We'll go to the Colts because, I mean, it's all a bit of a joke, isn't it? I've said it.
It's meant to be like such a positive season this year, and it's just not coming.
It just hasn't. I think I've mentioned it about a couple of teams over the last couple of episodes about, the distractions off the field and how poorly a club is run or perceived to be run off the field has such an impact on, the overall prospect of a franchise and how they're able to put them on the field. And I think all the noise that Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor have created over the last couple of weeks has really, dampened the mood, I think, going into this year, particularly with all the changes, the new head coach, the new quarterback. So, this feud between the two, I think, has to end quickly, and I think that ends with Taylor being moved on. Because I think, like I've said, it's not just a distraction for the front office. This flows down to the coaches and the players as well. And I think we saw that, last year quite a bit in Indianapolis. But I think if we're just looking player wise and taking, the off field stuff, out of context, then, it's good to see a new head coach in Steve Stecken and, Anthony Richardson as well, an absolute freak of an athlete. And I just can't wait to see what he's like as an NFL player. Who's so exciting to watch as a college player. He can run over people, he can blitz people downfield, he can, sling it, 60, 70 yards. But he's still very raw. And, I think he hasn't had, an incredible amount of, experience in college. Okay, he's not necessarily Trey Lance, but there's a lot to work on. And I feel that the Colts, have obviously been very quick to move on from quarterbacks if it hasn't gone particularly right. And I think there'll be an element of, having to stick with the quarterback if things aren't going, terribly well. But I think that marred with the off the field business is difficult. But yeah, try and be positive. I think the new head coach, obviously coming from Philly, I think that's perfect for Anthony Richardson. If seeing what the offensive scheme is going to be like, is going to be anything different to what Jalen Hurts was doing and how he developed as an NFL quarterback. But yeah, let's see what state the franchising is in come week one, because it could turn a little bit ugly.
I mean, I wanted to go into Sky and go, where do you think Jonathan Taylor will go? But I don't particularly want to just focus on Jonathan Taylor. So this is about their team. I don't think it's a massive shame, Sky. Like, Richardson gets drafted, where everyone's like dead excited for him as well. Like, everyone's dead excited to see where he goes. Everyone's dead excited to see what he becomes. He goes to a Colts team where they go, all right, like, this is cool for them. And then this whole Taylor stuff is just completely changing the conversation of what we should be talking about this Colts team. We should be focusing on not putting pressure on Anthony Richardson as such, but sharing the excitement with the Colts fans about what Anthony Richardson can be for this team.
Yeah, and I was excited for the Colts in the sense of, Anthony Richardson, quarterback, running those RPOs. Because, you can implement any scheme into an offense, right? And it can work if you've got the right pieces. But I think, and especially as Johnny's mentioned, if you've got the Eagles offensive coordinator coming over and how effective their offense was last year, there's a lot of excitement. But I think having a player like Jonathan Taylor just demands a bit more respect from opposing defenses to be like, right, we actually need to pay attention to these RPOs, Richardson running the ball. And annoyingly for a guy who, despite being basically looks like Cam Newton 2.0, he's only played 13 career college starts. So he needed someone to lean on. because there's a lot of pressure. I think obviously he has a great ceiling, but yeah, it's really tainted any expectations, all the stuff that's gone on. I mean, even the O-line is questionable other than Quentin Nelson. We saw how much Matt Ryan got destroyed with their O-line. The defense has fallen off in the sense that you had Shaquille Leonard, who was probably, for the first 4 seasons, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. And then last year he had back surgery and only played 3 games. So I think there's a lot of question marks on the Colts. And like you alluded to, the excitement was probably there when they were saying, Taylor Richardson, new OC. But now that one thing's changed, and this is a top story, NFL media's run with it, and there's a lot more unnecessary pressure on Richardson now.
Well, if you do want opinions on where Jonathan Taylor may go, we have got a fantastic article that is on all our social media content. It is on our website as well, written by Dan Roast, titled "Where Next for Jonathan Taylor." Make sure you check out that article. It's really well wrote, and I'm sure Dan and ourselves will really appreciate you guys going to check it out. Sky, why don't we move on to either the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Tennessee Titans? I feel like I was gonna leave it. Don't worry about it.
I want to talk about the Jags, but it's not fair to
I
Johnny.
knew you were going to say that's what I meant. You want to take the Jags, but that's the short scores and
that's
the
not
Titans.
fair. That's not fair for Johnny, considering I took the Texans, who I was quite excited to talk about. So
I've got a completely bizarre, bold prediction for the Jags, so I'll wait that then.
No, I want you to lead with that then, and I can chip in after. So I'm going to go with the Titans.
No, not at all. Wait for it.
Okay. Well, seeing as Johnny wants to go with the Jags, I'm going to go. I think even if the Jags are exposed against the tougher teams on their schedule, and I feel harsh using the word exposed, but I've looked at the schedule. They've got the Chiefs, the Niners, the Ravens, who I'm excited about, and obviously the Bengals. There's enough, what do you want to call it, low-hanging fruit or, easy games there for them to have another winning season and potentially win another AFC South. I think, obviously, the big excitement is Trevor Lawrence going from an awful season with Urban Meyer, where he was 12 touchdowns, 17 picks, to 25-8 last year, over 4,000 yards. ETN having over 1,000 rushing yards. They go and add Calvin Ridley, who I'm sure you guys have seen the video as well, where I don't know which receiver is running. It looked like slow motion compared to Calvin Ridley. Like, he looks sharp. And we know the potential of the Jags defense as well. I know it's mostly the same pieces as last year. I believe Josh Allen's in a contract year, which usually motivates players anyway. When you've got the likes of Trayvon Walker, you've got Devin Lloyd, who had a good rookie year. They've got Tyson Campbell at corner, even though there's probably some more question marks on that secondary. I think there's enough good young pieces for the Jags to do well. The only thing now is that once you become the top dog in the division, you need to back it up and do it again. And obviously last year they started 3-7, somehow ended up winning the division, and now they need to back that up and have a good 2023.
I'm on the edge of my seat, Johnny. I'm on the edge of my seat.
I might have to retract actually after Sky mentioned that the Jaguars schedule, but I was going to say that the Jags could be they could push the 1 seed in the AFC, but I'm going to retract.
You know what? When you say the Falcons could be a 10-win team, if you live in that world, I think the Jags could be a 13-win team. Honestly, I think the Jags could be in position to be 11+.
I don't think that's mad.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's mad.
I think Trevor Lawrence this year could easily become, top 5, top 3 quarterback in the league. We know the talent is there, and honestly, I'm thinking he's hitting 5,000 yards, pushing 40 touchdowns, single-digit INTs. The guy on his day, I think, towards the back end of last year, just looked unplayable. And I think with the additions that they've made this offseason, yes, they've lost, I think a couple of names on defense, and they've got offensive line issues with Cam Robinson, I think, missing a few opening games. But Lawrence and Pedersen have had another year of building their offense, and I really do think that he's that good. I also think it's a big year for Trayvon Walker, and Sky, you've mentioned Josh Allen as well, and how motivated he should be. But I think Trayvon Walker, we were all at this stage, we can say it was an absolute stretch for the Jags to take Walker first overall. He was, decent last year, but wasn't quite hitting the numbers that someone like Anthony Richardson, or the height that Anthony Richardson was getting. But I'm sure he's more motivated than he was this time last year. I think he looks in brilliant shape going into the new year, and obviously with Allen on the other side, I think they're just going to be a really good force on this D line. And yeah, I'm very, very, very positive about the Jaguars. I could honestly see them beating teams like the teams, that I could see them beating the Chiefs in week 2. I could see them beating the Bengals in the back end of the year. I really do put them in, that sort of category, and teams that perhaps have an elite quarterback but not necessarily the best defense. I think could at some point struggle to match what the Jags I think are about to do in 2023.
It could certainly be, for me, if there was going to be if you had a quarterback top 5 at the minute of like Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Burrow, Lawrence would be on probably 5 for me at the minute. I could certainly see by the top of the year Lawrence being in that top 3, and I think it would be Mahomes, Lawrence, Burrow. I think in that top 3. I think if anything, I think Allen and Hurts are the most at risk to be dropping down that sort of top 5 echelon, so to speak. Considering we're hopefully going to see them. Hopefully, we're definitely going to see him twice this year in the UK. I'm hopefully going to see him twice this year, but we shall see what happens with that. I am so positive about this team. I just think they've got all the right things, all the right areas. They'll need the rub of the green. They'll need some luck. But these teams get it. I think Trevor Manning, who is Andrew's dad, Trev, big shout out. Trev, been one of the biggest supporters of myself and this podcast and this whole journey we've been on for the whole time. He's been there every step of the way. He and Johnny Gilbert, who also did a lot of the fantasy show last year, who also has been on the podcast. Trevor has been on the podcast as well, giving him a bit more of a hype up, I suppose. When they took Lawrence, he was at home a lot. So he was watching lots of college football, and he was so like, Lawrence is the next greatest thing. Got drafted, and Johnny was just like, it's just not coming back. And he just kept going, just wait. He doesn't make, I'd be flabbergasted. It'd be obscene. And I think it was last year, we all saw each other, and he said to Johnny, he was like, I told you it was going to come good. And it finally has. And I think Jags fans were really a little bit nervous at the start of it. It was maybe going to tip off with Lawrence maybe, and he wasn't quite ready to the top level. But I mean, he's just showing it. I think he's probably the youngest, most exciting quarterback in the league at the minute. And when I say youngest, I mean like as in he's not been in the league that long compared to Mahomes, compared to Hurts and players like that. So I'm just dead excited about this here, which means for Johnny, you've got to talk very briefly about the Titans, which I'm sure won't be a long conversation at all. It's not giving the Titans much traction.
I'm not really sure what to make of the Titans. I think going into 2023, they're obviously missing out on the playoffs last year. I think we saw the start of what could be a bit of a reset for them with obviously the new general manager, Ron Carthen, coming in, and there were a couple of the old guards sort of being moved on. And I think, all suggestions pointed to a bit of a clear out, but we're here with obviously Ryan Tannehill's the starting quarterback. There's been a lot of noise about Derrick Henry. They've signed DeAndre Hopkins, who is into the twilight years of his career. Obviously, still a fantastic player, but I'm not sure where to position the Titans. I think what you're getting with Mike Vrabel. He's a team that builds a solid defense and very run heavy, big Derek. But I don't know where I don't really know where to put them. But if I was pushed, I'd put them in the bottom half of the teams in the AFC. I think there's a lot of question marks on their offensive line. All right, they brought in it's Skoronski from from Northwestern at college. I think that's where it was at. He looks a bit of a stud going into the draft. I was quite keen for the Jets to push up to maybe get him, but obviously he's landed in Tennessee, and I think that's a good suiting pot. But again, we don't really know too much about him at an NFL level. I think the secondary's got some some questions to answer. Obviously, there's some awful news actually coming out of the NFL about their cornerback Farley, about his family being involved in a house explosion, and thoughts go out to all of those involved. But yeah, other than that, I'm not sure there's too much depth at the position. But yeah, let's see how this team's doing in mid-season. I think if they start very poorly and they've got some toughish games to start out the year, I think we could see players being potentially moved on, which I think has sort of been coming, I think, for the last couple of years. And this isn't a team that I don't think that's going to go deep in the playoffs if they can get there. And I think in that sort of scenario, that's when you look to a rebuild. I think that's definitely coming with the Titans.
Very quick, Sky, because we've only got about 2 minutes left. I just think they're going to be all right. I mean, they'll be all right. Like, they're not going to be good. They're not going to be great. They're just going to be all right. Problem is with all right is you get slap bang in the middle of the draft and you don't really have the currency to be able to go get someone elite.
I'm looking at the clock and give myself 60 seconds. I think people forget that they started so strong last year. They were 7-3, obviously, before the wheels fell off. And I agree with you, Freddie, that I think if they didn't get those injuries last year, they almost certainly should have won that division. I mean, one of probably the biggest choke jobs that I can think of in recent years doing that. Made some underrated moves in picking up the tackle from the Eagles. Is it Dillard?
Dillard,
linebacker from the Niners. They've got I know Key, Arden Key also come over from the Jags. So good stuff there. Obviously they've got Will Levis. The question marks are there over Tannehill and his ability. But I think as poor as the secondary is, they still have Kevin Byard. They still have Derek Henry. And I think that I did see a stat that they were still top 10 in hurries and QB hits, even though they only had 39 sacks. So that speaks to what Johnny said about them being a strong defense. And we've seen they've even gone toe-to-toe with Mahomes multiple times. So, yeah, I think they'll be all right. But obviously the issue is, what is the long-term going to be if they don't get a franchise quarterback or a high draft picks? But let's see.
Well, thank you both for joining me on this episode. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Sky. If you're an AFC or an NFC South supporter, if you support any of them 8 teams, why don't you let us know in the comments and on social media about what you think of our episode, whether we're talking out of our asses or maybe making some sense. I don't know about that. The jury's still out on that one. Make sure you check out that wonderful article by Dan wrote on our social media as well. Check us out on all platforms, on YouTube as well. Lots more content coming your way. We'll see you all again very soon. Well, we'll finish up the divisional lookup to go to the West, and then the start of the season is very quickly upon us. See you all again next week.